Welcome to the Week 7 video editing lesson video. This is the 6th episode in the series. Today we're going to cover reversing a clip, speed effects, speed ramping, the flip effect, rolling titles, an intro to audio effects, and then we're going to create a still image collage and add some basic 3D effects to it. For today's exercise, you will need the SeaWorld footage as usual, but also a new folder called Week 7 Assets, which you can get from the SharePoint source, and we'll be using that at the end of this lesson. So doing speed effects in Premiere is relatively simple. Speed ramping gets a little more complex, but just basic speed effects are easy. Let's go with an action clip like J over spray. I'm going to put an in point at the beginning and play this part where the lady and the whale jump out of the water, make an out point. I'm going to put it on the timeline. And then to make it go backwards, it's simply a matter of right-clicking and going up to speed duration. This window opens up, and there's a box that I can check for reverse speed. And there we go, running in reverse. We can use that same box, speed duration box. Let's uncheck reverse speed. We can use this box to create fast motion or slow motion. I'm going to type in 200 for speed. And notice that the clip gets shorter on the timeline because, of course, it's going to play faster. So it takes up less room. And there it is running in fast motion. Or by contrast, let's put in 50% for slow motion. And I'm going to render that and play it. Now, as we play it, notice that there is this kind of stuttered effect. And this shows the limitations that we have within Premiere for doing really sophisticated speed effects. Premiere isn't really set up for that. There are ways to make slow motion go smoother. Obviously, one of the most basic is to shoot at a higher frame rate, like 60 progressive is much better for slowing down and getting a smooth effect. You can also go into Adobe After Effects and do something called frame interpolation and frame blending that will create a smoother slow-mo. Or you can invest in a third-party software like Twixtor, which is a great program which does what's called frame interpolation, creating frames between frames and morphing the image to create a smooth effect. So the speed duration window is great if you just want to slow down or speed up or reverse an entire clip. But what if you want to just maybe like slow down part of a clip, like the middle of a clip? Well, one way you could do that would be, say, to use the razor blade tool and just slice out the middle of the clip. And then we could go to the speed duration window. And we could slow that section down, let's say to 75%. And then there's a box here that says Ripple, Edit, Shifting, Trailing Clips. So then when I click OK, the middle section gets bigger and slower, and I render it, and it slows down in the middle and then goes back to normal speed. That's a simple, kind of crude way to make a speed change in the middle of a clip. But there's a much more sophisticated way. I'm going to undo to put this clip back to normal. And now we're going to do something called speed ramping. And in order to do this, you need to look for a little symbol up here in the video track that says FX. And I'm going to right-click on that. And then I get this menu that says Motion, Opacity, or Time Remapping. And this is going to allow me to make keyframes in either of those categories. What we want is Time Remapping. So we go to Time Remapping and Speed. And now what we have to do is expand the video track. And we always expand video tracks by expanding them upward, whereas audio you expand downward. So I mouse over this area right here in the track control area, and I drag upward. I'm going to drag a lot so I get a big display of the video track. And here in the middle is a white line, and this is a rubber band. And so I'm going to move the playhead forward to the point where I want it to start slowing down. Let's say when she starts to jump out of the water, somewhere around there. I'm going to make a keyframe. I do this in the same way I make audio keyframes. I hold down the Apple key and click on the rubber band. Okay. And this keyframe looks a little different from an audio keyframe. It is a kind of blue nubbin guitar pick kind of thing with this dotted line running down from it. Now let's move the playhead forward to the point where we want the slow-mo to end. Let's say maybe when she's diving back in the water. So we're going to hold down the Apple key and make another keyframe there. Okay, we have 2 keyframes, but we haven't changed the speed yet. So now we're going to mouse over the rubber band in between the 2 keyframes and not holding down any keys. And then I'm going to drag it downward. Let's say we'll go to like 75%. And you may notice the second keyframe is starting to disappear off of the screen. But don't worry, it hasn't gone away. It's just invisible for the moment. And then when I get to 50%, I release it, and the rest of the clip gets extended out because now we've got a big slow motion section in the middle, and there's the keyframe. Okay, so let's render that and play it. So it goes normal speed, then it slows down to 50%, right? Then it goes back to normal speed. And that's okay, but it's pretty much the same thing that we did when we used the razor blade. What we want is a speed ramp. We want it to gradually slow down, play slow for a while, and then gradually speed back up to normal speed. Here's how you do that. I'm going to look closely at the first keyframe. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. What we're going to do is actually split this keyframe into 2 parts. All right, so I'm going to mouse over the right side of this keyframe. I'm going to drag it to the right. And look what happens. It splits, and we get this kind of ramp in the rubber band underneath it. Now we're going to go to the second keyframe. I'm going to grab the half of it that's on the left and drag it inward. And you see how this ramp appears? There we go. So I'm going to really make that a very gradual ramp. Going to render and play it. So it goes normal speed, and then it gradually slows down. Plays slow, and then gradually speeds up. And that is how we do speed ramping in Premiere. Now we're going to talk about the 180-degree rule, which you're probably already familiar with. That's the rule that says when you've got a left-right relationship on screen and you're going from, say, wide shots to medium shots to close-ups or changing angles, you need to keep the things that are on the left and the things that are on the right in order to be able to cut smoothly without confusing the audience. Now that pertains mainly to the shot list and the storyboard and to the director on set. But sometimes an editor will have to be thinking about the 180-degree rule, especially if somebody messes up and crosses the line and shoots from the wrong side and things end up getting flipped. Then sometimes the editor can step in and save the day. So let's set up an example here where we've got a couple of talking head shots. Here's DF Ambassadors. I'm making an in and out point, throwing him on the timeline. And then I'm going to get DS Show Concept and throw a bit of him onto the timeline. And both facing right to left. Now, what if they're supposed to be having a conversation, a dialogue scene? That's not going to work because they're both facing in the same direction. They're supposed to be facing at each other in order to create the illusion of continuity that they are talking to each other. Well, if somebody messed up on set and crossed the line with one of these guys, sometimes the editor can step in and save the day by doing what? By flipping one of the shots. So let's highlight DS Show Concept and go to the Video Effects tab and open up the Video Effects bin and go down to transform, open that up, and you'll find an effect called horizontal flip. I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to render, and then we'll watch the result and see if it looks like they're talking to each other. So here's the one guy, and maybe he's saying, so Bob, what do you think? Do you think we're going to have a good show today here at SeaWorld? Well, Doug, yeah, the whales are pretty frisky, and I think that we're going to get a really lively show for the audience. So I think, we have created that illusion. And sometimes filmmakers will deliberately plan on flipping shots. James Cameron did that with the whole opening sequence of Titanic, where they knew historically the ship left from a certain side of the dock, but logistically they had to shoot the ship leaving from the other side of the dock. So they shot it all and planning to flip it. Now, one thing can mess that up, and that's writing, because, if you see writing flipped, it's going to be really obvious. And so what they did in Titanic, the art department had everything, all the lettering in reverse, so that when they flipped the scene, it looked normal. Now let's talk about rolling titles, which is something that people often want to use at the end of a piece. We can generate that pretty simply by going to File, New, and the legacy title, and we will call this rolling title, and click OK, and we get a title window. And let's just start typing in here somewhere. I'm just going to type a bunch of nonsense and hit return and have several lines of text. I'm going to give this all a drop shadow. I'm going to break the law here. I like drop shadows. Okay. Now, it's all currently left justified, right? And we probably want to center these titles. So first, we're going to center justify it up here, but we're also going to center it on the screen. And over here on the left side of the title window, you have centering icons. This one is for centering up and down, but we don't care about that. We want to center it horizontally. So here we go, and it moves over, so it's perfectly centered. Now, this is just a normal title so far. We want to change this to a rolling title. So we go up here to this icon, which are the controls for the title. Click on that, and we get a window called Roll Crawl Options. And we want a roll. But we need to do one more very important thing here. There's two boxes that say Start Off Screen and End Off Screen. We want to check both of those boxes, and now we could, set our font and color and so on, but then we're going to click OK, and then simply close the title box, and then go find our new title. There it is, rolling title. I'm going to drag it on top of a shot and render it and play it. There's our lovely rolling title. Now, what if we want it to be slower or faster? Super simple solution. If we want it slower, we just drag it out and make it longer, and it plays slower. What if we want fast, like the disclaimer at the end of an ad for some new medication? Whew! Just have it fly by. That's how you make a rolling title. Now let's talk a little bit about audio effects. Adobe has a whole program called Audition, which is a dedicated audio editor, and we'll talk a little more about that next week. But you can also do a certain amount of audio effects right inside of Premiere. So let's listen to Mr. DF Ambassadors here for a moment, and then apply an audio effect to him.
Power and their agility. It's indescribable.
Okay, I'm going to select that clip to add an effect to it. I'm going to go to the effects bin and open up a bin that we haven't looked at yet called Audio Effects. And there's a whole bunch of audio effects in here that you can explore, like equalizers and a de-esser to take some of those sharp S's out of people's speech that you'll find. We're going to go to a fun one here called the Pitch Shifter. I'm going to double click on that to apply it, then go to the Effect Controls. And here we see the pitch shifter controls. I'm going to click on where it says Edit. And this opens up this pitch shifter window. And let's say we want to raise the tone of the man's voice. I'm going to go up to 5, and I'm going to click on high precision here. So there's a minimal distortion of the voice. And now let's listen to his voice.
Their power and their agility, it's indescribable. And I think that's one thing people...
So it gets a little bit chipmunky. Now, if we just give it a little bit, like one semitone,
Their power and their agility.
it's subtle, okay? Or we can do something very unsubtle, like crank it way, way down. Let's listen to his voice now. Kind of Darth Vader-ish kind of voice. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we did a section on photomation, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that today, and in particular, how to deal with an image that has a portrait orientation. You remember we struggled with that a little bit, where a lot of photographs are taller than they are wide. And that's fine for photography, but when we bring those images into video, the standard frame is wider than it is tall. To illustrate that, let's open up the bin that we imported today, the Week 7 assets, and go to a file called Fly Hawaii. And there it is. So if we were to put this on the timeline on video 1, and then it's very high res, so it comes in all blown up. I'm going to go to Effect Controls and shrink it down so that we can see the whole poster. But we have these big black bars on either side of it, and we call this pillar boxing. And this is not the ideal thing to have those black boxes. So how do we deal with it? Well, one way is to keyframe a motion effect. And this, you'll see this done often in documentaries. And so what we're going to do is blow it up so that it fills the frame horizontally. And then we're going to tilt down to the bottom of the image. And then I'm going to make a position keyframe. I'm going to go several seconds further into the clip and change the vertical position so that we're up at the top and we see Fly Hawaii. And then I'm going to make this a little more elegant by adding an ease out to the first keyframe and an ease in to the second keyframe. There we go. So you'll see this done very often in documentaries when you have a portrait-oriented image. We kind of reveal the image by tilting up on it. They do this a lot, specifically with a portrait of somebody. We start down on their hands or something like that, and then we tilt up to reveal the face, and that's very nice. That's one way to do this, but there is another way to show the whole image without having to do a move like that. I am going to put another version of Fly Hawaii. This time I'm going to put it onto the video 2 track. I'm going to shrink it down so that we can see the whole image. What's bothering us are these black bars on either side. So how about we fill those areas with some other image, something that will fill the frame but not distract from the main image. So what I've done is I've gone online and found a kind of a neutral background that's a little more interesting than just solid black or some solid color, and it is some boards, some pieces of wood, okay? And so I'm going to put this onto the video 1 track underneath the Hawaii poster. And I'm going to shrink it down so the resolution looks better. Let's see, how far can I go? There we go. So now we've filled the frame and the image looks nice. It's as if this poster is hanging on a wall or sitting on a table or something like that. And now, if I want to, I could do Photomation where I, say, zoom into this. But in order to do that, I need to apply a motion effect uniformly to both layers. How do we do that? Well, it would be very hard to apply it individually to the layers. So I'm going to click and drag over these to highlight both. I'm going to right-click and go to Nest. Okay, so now it becomes a single clip. And then I am going to make, let's say, position and scale keyframes. Move a ways into the clip. And then let's zoom in on maybe these people arriving on the airplane. Okay. Let's make these ease in and ease out keyframes. Ease out and ease in. Okay, so we start wide and then we zoom into the people. Now this is nice, but one thing you may notice is that once we've zoomed in, we are kind of pixelated and we've lost a bunch of resolution. And this is partly because when you do nesting, it kind of bakes in the current resolution of 1920 by 1080, and then when we zoom into that, we're going to lose resolution. There are a couple of ways to do this same kind of thing without losing resolution so much, and one of them is to create your photo image collage outside of Premiere, inside of like Photoshop. Create a high-resolution, multi-layer Photoshop composition, and then export a JPEG at high-res and bring it into Premiere, and then do your Photomation here. That's one way. But there is another way to do it inside of Premiere by creating a high-resolution sequence, specifically a 4K sequence, and that's what we're going to do next. So to create a new sequence, I'm going to go to File, New, and Sequence. This window opens up, and I'm going to name it first 4K Sequence. And I'm going to start with a preset for digital SLR, 30 frames per second. And now I'm going to go to the tab here that says Settings, and this allows me to put in custom settings. And the main thing I'm going to change, or the only thing I'm going to change, is the frame size. So currently it's at 1920 horizontal size. I'm going to change that to 3840, and I'm going to change the vertical size to 2160. Those are the standard dimensions for 4K video. And I'm going to click OK. And then a new sequence opens up, both here in the project window and here on the timeline. All right, now I'm going to start building my collage in this high resolution 4K. I'm going to start out, the first layer is going to be the wood background. So I'm going to throw that onto the video 1 track. And then I'm going to use scale to scale it down so that it just fills the frame. And now I'm going to go to a file called Hawaii Map. Open that up. I'm going to target the video 2 track, throw it on there. Let's look at it. Yeah, I'm going to keep this pretty small there, but I'm going to make a few changes to this map. The effect control, I think I'm going to rotate it a little bit to the left. And next I'm going to go get our Stoddard photo and throw that onto the video 3 track. Okay, and that's covering up the map. I don't want that. So I'm going to go to scale. I'm going to scale it down, put it kind of on top of the map. And then I think I'm going to rotate it to the right and also slide it over so that we can see where it says Hawaii on the map. And I think I'll leave it right about there. And now the next one I want is the Fly Hawaii poster. I'm going to open that up. And I need a new track for that. So I'm going to add tracks, add a video track, and target video 4, and throw the poster on there. And then I am going to shrink it down. I'll shrink it down pretty small. And I'm going to rotate it to the left a bit and put it in a nice place. Let's see, where should we put it? How about over here? There we go. So it's like I've got these three things kind of casually tossed onto a table. Now, to increase the illusion that they're on top of each other, I'm going to add a drop shadow. So I'm going to select the Hawaii map. I'm going to go to the Effects bin, open up Video Effects, and go to a bin called Perspective. And there I have an effect called Drop Shadow. I'm going to double click on that to apply it to the Hawaii map, and then go to the effect controls for that. And first I'm going to increase the distance quite a bit, and you see this shadow kind of growing, but it's very harsh, hard edge shadow. So I'm going to go down to softness and crank that up until it's a pretty soft shadow. So that makes it look more like this thing is sitting on top of the wood. Now I want to add the same type of shadow to the other two layers, and so I'm going to copy and paste this effect. You can copy and paste an effect by going up to the name of the effect, highlighting that, and then typing Apple C. Then I highlight the started layer and then go Apple V. And the effect, after a second or two, gets added to the started photo. Let's do the same thing to Fly Hawaii, and there you go. So now I've got 4 different layers, but I'm going to want to work with them as one layer. So I'm going to drag over all of them and right-click and go to Nest. And I will call this Hawaii Collage. And click OK, and there we have a single layer. I want to work with this inside of my original HD sequence, so I'm going to simply copy this by right-clicking and going to Copy. And now I'm going to go back to my original HD sequence, sequence 1. And here at the end of it, I'm going to make sure that the target track is highlighted, and I'm going to type Apple V, and there is my Hawaii Collage, but it's blown way up because it is a high-res 4K file. It's bigger than the HD player it's inside of. So to see it all, let's shrink it down. Okay, there it is. Now I want to do some photomation on this, and I could just zoom in or rotate it or something like that, but I want to do something a little more fancy to really make it look 3D. I wanted this to look like it's sitting on a table in front of us, so we have to add some perspective to it. Here in the perspective bin of effects, there's something called Basic 3D. I'm going to double click on that to apply it. And here I have 2 controls, one for swivel and one for tilt. And this is really neat. Look at the swivel one. When I go back and forth on that, it's like it's on a wall, right? And we're swiveling it from side to side. But we want it to look like not like it's on a wall, but rather on a table. I'm going to make the swivel 0, and I'm going to grab the tilt. I'm going to go to the left, and look at that. It is tilting as if it's sitting on a table in front of us, which is neat. All right, now I don't want these black bars on the top and the bottom, so I need to zoom in again. But since it's in high-res 4K, we don't lose much resolution at all when we do that. All right, so this is going to be our starting frame, and we're going to do some animation here using keyframes. So I'm going to move the playhead a little bit into it, and that's where we're going to make our first keyframes. I'm going to make keyframes for position, scale, rotation, and tilt. A lot of keyframes there. All right, and I'm going to put an ease out on those. So I'm going to right click, go temporal interpolation, ease out. Okay, that's our starting point. Now I'm going to move the playhead a little ways down through the timeline. And first I'm going to zoom in quite a bit and reposition so that we're looking at Fly Hawaii. And I'm going to rotate it to the right so that the horizon in that poster is pretty level. And now I'm going to untilt this. I'm going to go down here to where it says tilt and just enter 0. And now I need to reposition it a little bit. So now we're looking straight down at Fly Hawaii. I'm going to correct the rotation a little more so that the horizon is perfectly level. All right, and automatically those became ease in keyframes because Premiere assumed that I wanted an ease in. And let's take a look at what we have created. So there we go. We fly right into that poster as if we're flying over the top of the table. So, and we don't lose as much resolution doing this because we created the collage in a higher resolution format using the 4K sequence and then bringing it into the HD sequence. So that's the end of today's lesson. The project today is going to be another Hollywood-style continuity edit. This time it's going to be a fight scene with some of the same kids that were in the Camp Hekalos piece. The challenge that you're going to find here is that these are not only not professional actors, they're not professional stunt people. So a lot of the fight sequence footage, it looks pretty fake, okay? But your job is to make it look real, okay? It's a hard job, but it can be done. I've seen it done numerous times, and some of the tricks to doing that are, first of all, just simply to avoid the parts that look really fake, which is a lot of the parts. You just can't use them. And then with the fight action sequence parts that look relatively realistic, you may have to use some speed effects, some speed ramping to make it look even more realistic. One way to help fight footage is to slow things down. Certainly Martin Scorsese did that in Raging Bull, right? Or you may at times speed things up, but selectively. Like, one of the problems is whenever there's a hit, these people don't want to really hit each other, so they kind of slow down when they approach the point of contact. And you can use speed ramping to speed that up so that you get this quick punch, right? You can use a little speed ramp in there to achieve that. Another thing that a trick that people use often is to shake the whole screen. You can use the position and scaling to make this little sort of mini earthquake effect on your footage. Get creative. And then sound is another big part of making action sequences impactful and realistic. And I've included some sound effects in the folder. You may want to go find some more sound effects, some punching sounds, and who knows what to make your piece more dramatic. And then, of course, music is going to be a big part of it. So it can be done. Don't get frustrated. And even with professional stunt people, it's still hard to make a fight scene look realistic or an action scene look realistic without creative work on the editor's part. And that's what you're going to do. You are going to do some real creative editing on this piece. And I look forward to seeing what you come up with.